Good morning, everyone. Okay, well, I just got out of a direct message conversation with a very dear friend of mine from many, many years back. Her name's Pam Binch, and she's written a book. Oh my goodness, am I going to be able to remember the name of it? Well, I don't have to because I can look right here. She writes about horses because I can't do two things at once and look. Just give me a moment. I think it's the spirit of the horse, but let me look. I think she's still living in France, but we studied together. She's English, so we studied together at Cambridge Body Psychotherapy many years back. And yes, so she's written a book. It's actually the second book or follow up to the first that she wrote. Um, it's called The Spirit of the Horse. And so if you're interested at all in, uh, let's see, in sort of a gentle, like Pirelli, for those of you who have heard of the Pirelli method, like horse whispering and gentle horse led therapy. I can't speak it very well because, that's not my field. But she came to the United States many years back after I had moved back from the UK. And we went on a trip together, kind of a preliminary trip to Pagosa Springs, Colorado, which is very near the Pirelli Horse uh, Institute, where she was going to study for about 6 to 10. Seems like it was like 10 weeks of training, and then she did more after that. But basically, what she's done is taken her training and her expertise that she got through her. She has a business background. I don't. Anyway, this is background that kind of ties into the Red Berets. You might be watching and wondering, what does this have to do with? Well, I've written the Red Berets might be my unwritten thesis, so I'll get to that. Um, it's really lovely to be back in touch with her because on social media, I have told the story about being asked in the UK by student colleagues. I know this doesn't match. It's a little clashy, isn't it? This is almost an orange red. By the way, this is Lisa um, at 50 lines only. This is her beret, her her brioche beret that I just finished. It's very similar to. It's the same pattern, in fact, as Justin Jackson's, but this is a little speckly because what you do is you're knitting always with two strands, but you do every other row. So one row you're working with the primary color, and then the next, and then you when you finish get to the end of the round, you drop that one, and you pick up the secondary color, uh, and you knit around with that, and then you drop it, and then and so on and so forth. But for this pattern, the reductions and the star shape don't they just call for you to do the rest of it in the primary color, which is red, which is what I did with the two original hats with Justin Jackson's, and this time I thought, why don't I have enough of the other yarn? Why don't I just keep the two strands together and knit them together? So that's why I kind of ended up with this cool thing. That's the story of this beret. Yeah. So back to the uh, see, look, it's kind of like a it's kind of like a slouchy beanie. You can wear it like a slouchy beanie if you want. There's lots of ways to wear these if you've been looking at them and thinking that you're just not a beret person. A lot of them are really just kind of a slouchy hat, and so they really just could be worn however you want to wear them. Anyway, so the documentary has me, of course, kind of like thinking of the very broad and very big picture, and Kenny Ballantyne is telling the story. It's his documentary. And as he commented, as he said to me when we had another meeting last night, because my mind, my imagination was positively like brimming over with the exciting ideas, not only for things that I want to try to fit in, but he's assuring me this is the first trip. I'll more than likely come back to Washington State, and then I will also be making trips. Uh, he's in touch with progressives in Utah, which is super exciting because I've been wanting to get uh, Dr. Jarvis connected up to some real Medicare for All activists in Utah. And I'm from Utah, but I haven't lived there in so many years. I don't have any real progressive community there. Um, so you can kind of hear that I'm all over the place, but this is really because this is how I was when it came down to committing to writing a thesis. So just for a little story or background about that, that was for 7.5 years. My husband and I lived over in, uh, we lived a couple of different places originally. We lived closer to Newmarket, and then we lived near, actually, not Newmarket, Norwich. See, look, oh, I haven't had coffee yet. We lived kind of near to Norwich, and then we moved to Newmarket, which is very near to Cambridge. And the thing I was studying when we first moved over there in the early part of the 7.5 years was craniosacral therapy, because I had just finished my basic course in massage therapy in California. And then uh, we moved over to the UK, and because he was in the military, I had gotten out, and he got like a 3-year assignment to RAF Lakenheath. So as soon as we kind of got our feet on the ground, and I got an independent contract on the base, just providing massage. So I was working part time. Um, and then I decided pretty quickly that I had experienced a craniosacral session in California and thought it was really amazing. So I looked up different schools and came to uh, the College of Craniosacral Therapy in London. And that was like one weekend plus a couple of commitments per month for 18 months, traveling into London and staying for the weekend. And really, it sounds kind of I mean, at least from a bodywork perspective, and kind of if you think of a basic massage program, which is anywhere from 6 to 10 months, uh, it's kind of, at least it's sort of a long commitment, over a year and a half. But really, what that ended up doing is just more like grounding me in the kind of work that I wanted to be doing and pressing upon me what I needed to learn more about. So, yeah, we were working one weekend with the viscera, uh, kind of all of the emotional holding that the guts and the viscera, um, and organs and whatnot hold. Um, and I remember Thomas Atley, our course director, saying to everyone, if you feel that if you particularly tune in on more of like an emotional level to people, as opposed to merely a biomechanical kind of way of working with the body, then you should seek further training in learning how to hold those kind of hold the process in that type of way. Um, and essentially, he was kind of talking about go become a psychotherapist. No big deal. Just go get some training in that. Um, let's see. But then, I had spoken with one of the tutors at some point saying, I feel like I'm doing this wrong. This is a really, really, really subtle level of I call it listening with the hands, with palpation. It's not like feeling like a tense muscle. It's not like feeling a trigger point in the body and being able to be like, oh yeah, that's like solid as a rock. things getting through that, or we need a lot of, yeah, it's that's a really physical way of working with the body, and it's got its value and all of that stuff. Uh, some good old pressure feels good, but there's many other ways of working with the body that are much more subtle, and in my own professional opinion, are a lot more effective. So I really like an integrated approach. It really sounds like I'm all over the place, but I'm gonna connect the thread. You'll see. So anyway, after kind of talking to this tutor, her name was Melanie, and I explained that I thought that I was um, perceiving everything wrong, and just maybe I wasn't doing it right. And that's a real theme with me. And she asked me to describe kind of what I was experiencing in the best, because craniosacral is something that isn't put to words very, very well, So I just do recommend that people try it, and then recognize there's people with all different sort of backgrounds and levels of training. If somebody's done a weekend of craniosacral therapy, it's quite likely that you will walk away with an experience of saying, oh, that really wasn't anything. It really, not being snobby about it, it's just it's a very kind of intricate and subtle level of palpation, which means to sort of feel and listen with the hands, and you cannot learn that in one weekend. You can gain something that's of value, but you won't. Right? People need to do more than that if they're really gonna tell people they're practicing craniosacral therapy. But anyway, uh, she said, once I did describe it, no, Laura, you're not wrong. You're just you really need you understand the biodynamic approach. That's how you're experiencing it, and that's how you're processing it. So you need to read the work of Franklin Sills, and he is an American, but he teaches, and he's lived for many years in um, Devonshire. Um, so he's in Devon, and they've got the place is called the Karuna Institute. So I did get when I finished that basic course, I looked that up, and that they've taken an old manor house and turned that um, into a retreat center. Everything there is residential. They teach core process psychotherapy, biodynamic craniosacral therapy, and different forms of. They have different silent meditation retreats there. I haven't been there for many years, but I did go to one advanced craniosacral course, which was on healing, or how to hold shock and trauma processes. Really, another way of saying that is PTSD. So that was a phenomenal weekend. Then I ended up kind of going back to uh, where we lived at the time, was the place near Newmarket. Going back and doing my sessions on the base, and that was really quite perfect, because when you're working with people that are in the military, you are working directly with people that have a lot of PTSD. Um, and then it was like weeks later, so I didn't draw the correlation that I was having, fragmentation and things that had come up, that my own sort of, we all have trauma, we all have brokenness, and different amounts of trauma. Obviously, some people much more traumatic experiences and backgrounds than others, but we all have trauma in our system, and health. That the whole idea behind uh, the type of modalities that I studied is that the health is always centering the conditions present. That's what Franklin Sills would say. That's that the health is always at the center. Even though, so if we go in listening to the body with an idea of finding dis-ease or illness, of course we're always going to find that. And it's not that we ignore the fact that that's there. It's that we always want to hold it within the context, no matter how uh, broken or diseased or ill or traumatized. There's many words that we could put around it. No matter how much that is the case in someone's system, and health can be very difficult to access with somebody with a very, very, very traumatic process and history. But it is there, and the health and the wellness and the wholeness is always centering those conditions. Otherwise, the person would, we, there isn't life without that. So, anyway, that after I finally kind of, after it clicked that something on that course had come up for me, uh, brought up some of my own trauma, I remembered that they did teach body psychotherapy there, uh, core process psychotherapy, which is a Buddhist, based on Buddhist philosophy. So I called them up and said, "Yeah, I feel like I need a few sessions or a bit of session work to help process whatever has come up for me." And when I did the cranial course, do you have anybody in the in or near the Cambridge area? And I think that at that point we knew we knew we were moving. That's the thing. I was in this sort of process also of a move. Um, and they said, yes, we do. We have someone in Cambridge. So I got his information and I set up an appointment and I began. It wasn't very many sessions in that, because he worked at Cambridge Body Psychotherapy Center, that I started looking around in there, and because that was kind of like this cozy house that was turned into a treatment center. So there was a kitchen and a kind of the living room area was kind of the big, not big, but kind of um, gathering room for coursework that was done, because they were small courses. They would only ever have maybe a maximum of 15 or 16, and it was much more like 12 was even really kind of a big group, because this was very present process, kind of deep process type work. It wasn't, anyway. So it didn't take me long going to see this therapist to kind of look around and say this and see their pamphlets and say, what is offered here? This is amazing. Or this looks interesting. And he said, yeah, they teach biodynamic massage and and body psychotherapy. And so I had had such a, what I considered I didn't have a good primary education. Like, I didn't enjoy education. It was traumatizing in and of itself, or at least my experience, my system, I experienced it that way. Um, so I really, once I kind of found what type of a learner and what I was passionate about, um, that I really wanted to go to school a lot. So I embarked on that concurrent course of, so biodynamic massage is taught as its own therapeutic modality. You can have somebody who you can go and receive biodynamic massage. It is a holistic form, so it has definitely, it includes that kind of all of us as a human being. You're not just a person that has muscles and bones and fascia and blood and um, lymph and all the things that we kind of think about as typical Western massage therapy focusing on. Um, so it's a fascinating modality in and of itself, and I could really want to talk about it for a while. And I'm doing a bit of that. I'm starting to let that come out a little bit at where I'm working here in Tacoma at Marconi Chiropractic, as well as the craniosacral therapy. I can't practice body psychotherapy, and I'm not sure that I would want to. I'm not a, I don't know. I really like working as a, uh, it's a lot to hold a psychotherapeutic. So I would say that if somebody comes to see me, they do get more of a holistic and deeper holding approach than what they would typically be used to if they went to get, just a Swedish or deep tissue massage. I do a sort of more holistic and deeper form of process work with people, but we aren't contracted, and nor am I qualified to do body psychotherapy. But the point is that biodynamic massage there at Cambridge Body Psychotherapy was taught as an adjunct. It was taught both as its own wonderful holistic modality that people could learn how to do, just to offer biodynamic massage, and also as an adjunct for a tool to be used by body psychotherapists. And there were other physical or body uh, interventions as well. So, as you can probably gather, body psychotherapy is um, there are many different influences, and many different people have sort of heard about Rolfing. That's not that in and of itself is more physical. It's not kind of the whole. There's just a lot that Soma. There's a lot that people will have heard about. Um, Hakomi is here in the United States. I've thought about looking up Hakomi and kind of furthering my education with it. But anyway, 4 years. And so you would use massage or physical touch on people when it's appropriate. And sometimes it doesn't feel safe for people with a lot of trauma in their process to receive touch. But obviously, you're working with people where that's the contracted agreement. That sometimes you're on the talking stream, um, but we're always if somebody was talking about what's brought them in, you would notice. You would notice that this shoulder is held like that, or when they start to talk about this issue, uh, there's like a, there's something that changes in their face, or there's a, an angry tapping of their, you know what I mean. These are really, there's just, and you work with the breath, and you try to bring the breath more into consciousness, and you try to anchor whatever the person's is coming into for treatment for, and whatever they're talking, you try to root that experience, whatever's coming from their past or their present, into the session work. You try to, because it can just be a whole lot of talk there. Let's talk about the problems. That's it's so interesting to kind of parallel that with how we kind of do activism too. Okay, so I can kind of, this is why I think, to get to the title of this, I'm wondering if my unfinished thesis, so to get to the point, I did 4 years, which is not enough, of course, to become a psychotherapist, but it was certificate level. So I completed, excuse me, I completed all of that work, holistic anatomy and physiology, all the hours of biodynamic massage, which was over 3 years. And weekends, so it wasn't, but so that a lot of that modality, and then concurrently with the 4 years of body psychotherapy. And uh, so at the end of that, what you're meant to do is, to satisfy that particular course, is to write. It wasn't, when people hear about a thesis, it's not like a doctoral thesis. It's nothing like people would hear it and go, God, you didn't write that. Because it was only like something like 10,000 words or something like that. And I could easily write 10,000 words. That's not the issue. That's not the issue. I couldn't bring myself to write it because at that time I was still really stuck in even as much work as I had done. It felt terribly exposing to me, because writing a body psychotherapy thesis, they don't want you to just write about theory. It's not meant to. It certainly is meant to be grounded and woven in with theory, but it was also meant to be a living process, and to include ourselves and put ourselves out there. And that felt very, very scary to me. And also because I now respect and understand how my mind works, which is like, I'm kind of I'm very much a kind of universal thinker. And so I didn't know how to take the various kind of big ideas that I had, and how to harness those and bring them in and reel them in, uh, and write a thesis, because you also can't just have all these really great ideas. You have to be able to bring them in and anchor them down and write and make it make sense. And that whole process was really overwhelming to me. So I wasn't writing it, and I wasn't writing it. And Jill Westland, who's the course director, said in her British accent, "Oh, Laura, it's going to be such an enormous shame if you can't bring yourself to do it." I'm not laughing at her. I mean, it was really tragic. It was really, really sad because it was something that I experienced a lot of joy, and it is, to complete a process like that is an enormous amount of putting yourself out there and getting really deep into some very painful processes and some very joyous processes, right? So with all of those people that I got very close with over the course of 4 years, and so you know, I I didn't do it, and I moved back to the United States because at the end of 7.5 years, my husband couldn't get any more extensions through the military, and they said, "No, you're out of here." It was absolutely something that they let us stay for 7.5 years, and so this is always when we talk about the bases that need to close down, and they do. We need to bring those funds back home and stop funding all the endless wars. But this is the sort of interesting thing. Uh, I mean, look, I understand actually that I'm kind of the rare exception. I don't think that a lot of military spouses or active duty military go and take that opportunity to actually let the cultures that they are in, they're there, but some people do. And so the beautiful thing about uh, the good outcome of, like, okay, this is the case, the military base was open, we did serve over there, uh, you know as part of the military industrial complex, as part of the machine. Um, but what I was able to do and willing to do was to let the voices and the culture that, because we didn't choose to live on the base, we chose every moment that we could to be off of the base, and learning and experiencing the culture. And so then what happened was, I didn't know anything really before going there about the injustices of our system. I had had my family was my working class, and my dad worked in the oil field, and uh, I wouldn't say we had plenty of money. I would say it was sometimes times were pretty tough, and I've never really asked my mom if they had health insurance. My mom was very good with organizing her finances and making what we did have, and like when we were in between times of him having a job, like she was very meticulous, and at that time, one income was, especially in a place like rural Utah, was enough. So I don't mean to say, oh, my mom was just really good with finances. Uh, in its time, that was enough money, but I have never really asked her how how it was, and if we had scary times of not having health insurance. So that's interesting to kind of ponder about this. But my overall recollection is that we had enough. If we were sick, we went to the doctor. Uh, so I, my young childhood didn't really convey or teach anything to me of that there were people out there that couldn't go to see a doctor, right? So that was something that I was learning when I went to the UK and when I was studying with these people who, not all of, but certainly I can name about two or three of them who uh, were my teachers and student colleagues who had taught, who had at one point worked within the NHS and had provided holistic therapy within the NHS, because the NHS, though it doesn't, I actually can't speak to everything that it covers, but I do know, depending on what the diagnosis and everything like that, that there are some holistic therapies that are covered, just like healthcare is covered within the NHS. And when when they did engage in conversations with me, the conversations, as I've said on Twitter and said online, when telling this story many, many times, nobody said, "Oh, you have a fantastic system, Laura. We really hate the NHS here, and we hope we can one day emulate what the United States is doing." No one said that. And these people, and not being pretentious about anything, I'm saying I worked and learned within a pretty developed holistic form of healthcare, uh, and learned from people who had studied and taught and worked kind of within that system. And their comments to me were, uh, gosh, I hear some of the horror stories, from the United States, and I'm just wondering, like, how did you have any experiences like that, and how, that must be really really terrifying. And I'm kind of ad-libbing all of these comments, but I did hear that. And the one that I quote that really sticks out is like, how can you how can you stand to serve a country that leaves so many behind? And that was really, um, pretty much, I think, a direct quote. So I use it a lot, in my meme and everything. And that was really a waking up moment for me. And kind of first thing was to kind of curl up in shame and kind of embarrassment, because I didn't know what they were talking about. I just didn't have that experience. Um, like I said, we weren't really particularly well off at all. We were really a working class, family, um, but it was enough, and it was fine. And I did not have a terrifying childhood of that we wouldn't be able to go see a doctor. So I didn't have any context of that whatsoever. And so my first reaction when when someone says something and you just have no clue, and it's kind of, sometimes people are just like, "Oh, I have no clue what you're talking about," which is probably what I would do now. But how I did that at the time was to kind of really just feel shame, uh, of ignorance, and shame stacked on top of shame. So I took that away with me. Um, and it was just the first moment of me beginning to kind of open my eyes and question, wow, really? I was embarrassed. I knew enough at that point to be kind of embarrassed, and to know also that I had conflicted feelings about us serving in the military. But we were still serving, and I was very much taking advantage of, and enjoying, and learning. And I think when all is said and done, that is the system that we have. That is our imperialistic, heavy-handed approach in the world. And if anything good, uh, nothing really good comes out of that. And I hope that it ends. As far as my personal experience and how that, shaped me as an activist, I'll be grateful for that piece, because that's just how it is. That's how it was. That's what we did. Um, and then years later, hearing Bernie, and the national nurses, and Jane and Roseanne DeMoro, and, starting to think about knitting for nurses. So I was telling Kenny Ballantyne, on the Zoom call yesterday, that, um, you know, when he'd been asking about, what is the scope that you can imagine for this documentary. At the time he first asked me it, a week or how long we've been in touch now, um, I didn't exactly know how to answer that. It was pretty general, because that's the type of question you maybe some people that are more process oriented have to kind of take some time to think about. And so, I had just kind of answered, well, I really thought of kind of like, um, Red Berets in town halls, and Red Berets marching for Medicare for all, in the streets, and seeing a lot of it the same way that we saw a lot in the Pink Hat movement, except everybody in solidarity asking and demanding, healthcare justice for our country. So, that was the original answer. And then now that it's had more time to the questions had more time to percolate in my system, I've remembered that at the end of the body psychotherapy course, um, Jill Westland unraveled this red thread, and we all kind of stood in a circle. And this was kind of like a not graduating, but yeah, like a ceremony, like a final ceremony of just honoring that configuration, that particular configuration that we would our friendships were really deeply rooted, and so we would probably come together in other groups or stay connected in our lives in one way or the other. And we have, I've really been very, very focused and active here in the United States the last 3.5 years, and so have not communicated with Pam Billage and a few others hardly at all. But now we're back in touch. So isn't this is very interesting timing. Because it's like I'm reaching back and saying, yes, you've always been here with me, and here's this red thread that we all sort of held on to and stood in a circle. And I don't remember exactly all that we did with the red thread, but it was like when we had to sort of cut the red thread and each take our own length to keep. Um, but with this kind of understanding that our piece, we were all still going to be connected with by this red thread. um, and so, I really do think of the Red Berets as that was the beginning of this. That was the beginning of this. I hadn't really thought, oh yeah, maybe I thought of red because of the red thread, but it is all really, really, really fascinating. And then there's this thread of, Kenny wanting that he's in touch with Medicare for All activists in Utah, and, Dr. Joe Jarvis, who's a conservative doctor and has written, is it Our Purple World? What's it called? I can't believe that I have to struggle to look things up sometimes. Oh well. But I want to know because I think I think we all need to read this book, and I yeah. So it's called The Purple World. Uh, Dr. Joe Jarvis is a physician, former public health official, and author of The Purple World: Healing the Harm in American Healthcare. Um, and so anyway, yeah. So this red thread I have is really, and here's Lisa, 50 lines only, living in Pennsylvania. She used to live in Washington State, and she and Scott Denoyer are flying out for this first filming, which again is just the beginning. He's going to get a foundation of as many interviews as he can, but without biting off more than he wants to make sure that the interviews that he does. Some of them won't need to be long interviews, but he is going to interview Scott, of course, and Lisa, and quite a few local whole Washington organizers. Because whole Washington is where I've applied the Red Berets. I've been knitting the Red Berets and trying to spread the movement by knitting and encouraging people to crochet and craft and get it started everywhere. And that's why I've sent berets, and Fran Bauer has mailed berets to to movement leaders so that we could get the visibility. The whole idea wasn't, oh, let's knit for Nina so we can try to be famous. The idea was to get the idea of Red Berets out there so that other people would start crafting them so that we could bring handcrafters into this movement. People will hopefully at some point come to understand what would happen if we really got a significant number of it, which is probably why I should have been on Ravelry. I don't like to be where I'm not at. That's just not, I'm not, I do my process the way I do my process. And as soon as there's people who are wanting to just be completely about the craft, they'll put their work on Ravelry, and I encourage you all to do that. But I'm not going to be where I don't want to be. Twitter is where I wanted to shape these as the strongly, when I say political, that might be a really loaded word, as the purposeful things that they are, the intentional thing that they are behind the craft. And I'm all about the policy. We can sit and say we need Medicare for all, we need healthcare justice for the 99%, all we want, and it's true. But without direct action, we aren't getting it. Without a hell of a lot of direct action, we're not getting it. You know, I want to get back to this thesis and this unwritten thesis, or kind of loop back to that. But just, yeah, just to press on this point one more time, that we need a lot of people like Steve and Leah Perkle are going to also be sharing their story with Kenny when he comes up. They're local activists, and they live in Senator Annette Cleveland's district. And Leah Perkle wrote an article in their local paper that basically tells their story. And, you know, Senator Cleveland is not a happy camper right now. There's a lot of heat coming onto her, and that is as it should be. Out of everyone on that Senate Healthcare Committee, and there are 11 of them, she has taken the most, but collectively, that committee has taken over $1 million, and what is it? 6 of them are Democrats, 5 of them are Republicans. So in my mind, that's pretty much a bipartisan committee. So that is the story that we need to get out to people. This is a committee that is basically very, very balanced. It's Republicans and Democrats. It is led by a Democrat, Senator Annette Cleveland, but collectively they have taken over $1 million. So they're working as a unit for the insurance lobby. That's very, very clear. Follow the money talks. And yeah, so here's our red thread. Here's some red. Here's our pound of love. My point is, we're going to do a very big direct action here in Tacoma. It's going to time up when he's here, that we're going to be going to bring chairs and circle the block of Representative Kilmer's office, who is still not a co-sponsor, and he's not. He's chair of the New Democrats. It's very much just like Nancy Pelosi. It's just very much his job to make sure to allocate the funds, to make sure that incumbents are protected, and he's not for this policy. He is a very personable politician, so he's someone who, unlike Denny or former Representative Heck, who is now our lieutenant governor. And there's just way too many people and Democrats in this state who think that a D in front of somebody's name means that they're serving us. Denny Heck, it was a staunch adversary, a staunch detractor of Medicare for All. He made that crystal clear to me when I asked him directly. He practically yelled it at me. Never. When I asked him, when will you co-sponsor? At that time, it was HR 676. When will you co-sponsor Medicare for All? And he really shouted, never. I do not support that legislation. I never will support that. In addition to, when I pressed him further, him coming into my space and taking my forearm and having his face right in mine. because I was sharing my story about being a veteran who had served in countries where healthcare is guaranteed as a right, and my sister living in Canada and having her life having been saved twice by their system, and being a volunteer who has gathered thousands of signatures. Those three things put together, he was super not a happy camper. And I did end up filing an assault charge, which was then promptly dropped by I'm sure he had it dropped. It doesn't matter. But the point is, I'll continue to share that he should not be our lieutenant governor. He doesn't belong in office. Anytime that people do town halls, uh, he's not alone in this. Democrats and Republicans alike, whatever, these corporate owned people, they speak to their constituents who they're that seat is there for them to represent us, and they look at us and speak to us as though we have no right to ask these questions and to make these demands. That's how on their entitled pedestal that they are. And no wonder that they feel that way. They have a lot of money protecting them and telling them, you are doing exactly what you're there to do. You are keeping our pockets cushy and cozy and filled with cash. So you aren't there to answer those people's questions. You're there, and we will keep you there, and you do your job, and your job is to stop Medicare for all and other progressive and a minimum wage, a living wage. Oh God, I just can't even. That's cinnamon, whatever her, the hateful hate. I can't even. I just can't even. There aren't even any civil words like the gut wrenching. I just can't imagine. I can't imagine having that power and dancing up and gleefully doing a thumbs down to a basically it's not 15 is not a living wage. Can we fucking stop saying that, please? 15 is still a poverty. It's a poverty wage. $7 is a starvation wage. So I can't imagine being one of these people like that who marches up, who has the power. I really honestly can't understand how they live with themselves. And I can't even, I'm out to the point where I almost can't engage with it on Twitter. I still do, but I don't even have anything profound or good to say. I just want to call them the worst names in the book. And I don't really, I'm already shadow banned. So I don't feel like having my voice and my account stifled any more than it already is. As we do valuable organizing. We're trying to connect, people up there on Twitter. So I kind of don't have time to go get banned and stuff by that. But for those people who are putting an enormous pressure on Twitter through your stuff, well done. Keep that up. I just can't. I'm just, Anyway. You see how that kind of changes my energy when I go to that. So this comes back to the piece of the handcrafting. Some of us have, and I don't mean to say no. Well, those who don't have the fortitude. Um, it takes a very specific type of person who is willing to go in the trenches on a continual and sustained basis to talk to these monsters. That's what they are. They're fucking monsters. People who will turn and do a thumbs down to people being able to feed their families and have health care and have a roof over their head. That's disgusting. They're not even they're I don't know what they are. Sociopaths, like people have said. So people in general, there's a lot of people that we can enlist, to use a military term, to help with this cause, but who do not. Well, it takes away in a certain way. It really does. You're a soldier, for peace, but you are, nevertheless, it takes a lot of fortitude to go into these town halls and to try to face these people that are owned by the insurance and all the other lobbies. And it's scary. It's a little bit intimidating. I won't say I was very intimidated when I filed that. Denny Heck was on quite a few powerful committees, and these people have power. They have real power. And so, yes, it is scary to take these people on in any meaningful way. And people have lives and they have incomes to earn at a not good wage. They cannot all be in the trenches working on activism. And to the point of craftivism, there are a lot of people whose help we can get, and they can start getting their work out there, and they don't have to be in the trenches. Not everyone's willing to do that, but they are willing to help creatively support a good cause. So that's what we need to do, is we need to get like that enormous amount of creative solidarity moving out and getting that work out to the activists who are willing to be on the front lines, or able to be on the front lines. Let's remember there's retired nurses of the year of 90 years old who have formally crafted for the Red Berets. Quite a handful of nurses that are in their later years of retirement have crafted for the Red Berets. There's a lot of people who we can, that is their way to contribute. And so I've been trying for a long time, myself and a few other core people. And this is why I'm so happy that Lisa is flying out. She recognized this idea. She's not the only one. Fran Bauer did, and lots of people have recognized this and helped us along the way and helped spread the message. And Dr. Dooley and Nina Turner, that's why they put those on. They saw this as like a way that we could that we could um, creatively engage the grassroots, because we need all different skill sets and talents to create a whole. And the Red Berets are like the fabric. We're creating the fabric. That's Lisa's quote. She said at one point, let's craft the fabric of our future. And that's what we're wanting to do, is bring some, because it didn't the you see the energy has changed again, right? Can you, if you're not energy people, but can you feel and see the difference in how my hands are moving now? There's more flow, there's more breath, there's smiles, there's more light in my eyes. um, the work that political activists do to go face off with these corrupt criminals that are occupying our seats, that must be done. That's work that must be done. Primarying these people and running campaigns must be done. All of this work has to be, but it does. But it does take something. It is much nicer to be with the energy of creating something beautiful, um, for the healthcare justice movement. And there are people who want to help, who are not really otherwise able, uh, who will craft these in their homes and who want to help. There are all kinds of things. Every single one of these berets could be attached to a healthcare story. Every human being is a healthcare story, is a piece of our collective whole that we need to get out there to tell to people, on all sides of the political aisle. We can't, of the spectrum. This is not, we have to get rid of this as a partisan issue. We have to talk to conservatives like Dr. Joe Jarvis and many. He's a doctor and a conservative in Utah, but there are many more people like him. You know, when we talk about 70%, or whatever the percentage of Democrats, maybe it's even higher. Is it like 85? I think it's a little high. I think there's a lot of, depends on what we're calling Democrats. We know that the progressive wing of the Democratic Party believes in Medicare for all. I'm just thinking of my local Democrat meetings, and that there really are quite a few Republicans, or corporate uh, people in there that are gatekeepers and naysayers, and Lisa can speak to this. She's been getting very involved in local Pennsylvania politics and groups. So the more that you do, anywhere that you are, the more that you do, the more you realize even the progressive organizations are infiltrated with uh, centrists. I don't even like. I don't like all these words, but we have to have something to describe people. Uh, these organizations are infiltrated with people who are slowing the progress down, who are naysaying, who are saying, for example, in Washington state, we need to study universal health care for 4 more years. We don't want a person like that on a board of one payer states because they've slowed down and hampered and poisoned the well for legitimate, amazing a bill that's amazing that is received the green light from the Department of Revenue, 5204. Well, I don't want that person on the board. It's kind of too bad because I think that she is. I will speak out against these people, and I don't care how unpopular that makes me. Uh, we have people that have looked towards the Republicans as being the reason we can't have healthcare justice. They are. We have people who look towards corporate Democrats as the reason that we can't have healthcare justice. They are. Nancy Pelosi, the Nancy Pelosi's of the world, the Joe Bidens of the world. They absolutely are. And I look at this thing as kind of like rings of hamperment. Is hamperment a word? Things that are getting in our way of achieving this. Like the obvious ring is Republicans, and that's just the numbers don't lie, that there are fewer Republicans, although quite a significant number of Republicans who do support uh, this legislation. That's why Bernie was able to go on a Fox News town hall and get a standing ovation when when he talked about Medicare for all. Um, that's why Paula Jean Swearengin can make such a huge impact in West Virginia. That's why Bernie won West Virginia. So we have to. That's why he won Utah in the primary. Let's talk about that. So it's. I actually feel that we need to pull the story in of people from all across the political spectrum, and we need to make people that are typically more conservative minded, or we need to get the story from those people too, because believe me, there's people within the progressive movement who have been very problematic, who are gatekeepers. And so I personally, at this point in my activism, don't really look towards the obvious. I don't need to continue to state the obvious every single day, which is that Republicans are for enriching. They're absolutely for the privatization, for making healthcare even more for profit, and for bankrolling insurance CEOs and fattening the pockets of big pharma. Uh, that's so obvious. Why would I don't let other people go and continue to focus on that if you think that's whatever. Those of us that understand what's going on understand that's exactly the case. And now everybody that knows what's going on understands that Nancy Pelosi needs to be removed from that seat. Uh, and so many corporate Democrats, because the Democrats are the ones that are stopping this. There would be hearings going on. There should be hearings going on when Representative Jayapal's bill is dropped. We need to see some very hardline playing, some very vocal demands from the progressive caucus and from all of us. And I'm not going to stand by and hear any of this nonsense about go easy on them. They didn't want to do force the vote at the time when we had the power to extract something and to make Nancy Pelosi feel the pressure that she should have. There's no way a corporate, a servant of the oligarchy like Nancy Pelosi deserved to get off the hook and just receive that vote for nothing. I will still go back and relitigate that every second. People like her should never be comfortable. So that no, they just should never be comfortable. So this was not everyone who had this is that we were. This was about attacking our beloved progressives. That's bullshit. That is not what it is. If Nancy Pelosi and people like her are are feeling comfortable in their servitude to the oligarchy, then we have a problem, and we have our elected progressives not doing what they need to be doing. And then it is our job to pressure them. It is our job to make, we don't have the power. We all are tweeting and calling and doing stuff for Nancy Pelosi. The reason the heat went on to AOC and the Progressive Caucus is because they actually have seats of power. We don't have those. So while everybody was like, why are you attacking these people? Because they wield power. We don't. We have power. We have people power, but we don't have the power to withhold a vote. So this has all been litigated and relitigated. But my point is, we need to see that. I do think it's really a shame that so far we have let somebody like Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden that administration feels so comfortable in their first how many days in the new session, and they feel way too comfortable. So we need this pressure from progressives. We need to continue to put pressure, and to those people who think that's super uncomfortable and aggressive. Well, I'm not going to apologize for it's not even a matter of an opinion. It's a simple matter of fact that until they feel the pain, that the squad does have the power to pressure and inflict upon them, they're just too comfortable. So you can really feel how just entering that realm of partisan and that sort of what's slowing down the single payer movement and all of this world is very mucky and very just kind of, it's kind of contracting. It's kind of and it has to be done. This stuff has to be done. Don't even get me wrong. I'm not like, ooh, everything should just be all flowy and perfect and no, but like to really heal, to really heal our nation in a holistic way. I think that we need to just like I was talking about when there is trauma or conditions present in the body, that it's always being maintained or held within or centered by the health in the system. And that if you're treating someone, we have to try our best not to just tune into the forces of trauma and oh God, you've got these enormous trigger points. This is like a rock, nothing. Like if that's all we tune into, then that's all that exists. That's what except it's not. This is stuff that is not very easily put into words, but there is a way to mobilize that tissue that is not only just, believe me, that tissue armoring is so dense that you could put, I could put an elbow in, I could put a ton of pressure, and sometimes you can force through it. It's temporary. Someone will be back next week or 2 weeks saying it felt great for like several days. And then, it came back. Of course it did. Like, because we're not getting at the root cause. We're not treating it in a holistic way. I mean, I could sit and force through your trigger points and your tense muscles and beat you up I don't do that kind of work. I simply, once in a while, I do enough to help the muscles feel met. If there is tension and if there is pain, something has to feel met. It can't be, I'm this and right? It has to be like, I feel you. You're there. I acknowledge you. You must hurt. You must hurt. That I feel this, right? But it also, we have to find a way in. We have to find a way to help it expand. I don't want to just force through it with a sledgehammer. That's not the only answer. Sometimes we need a sledgehammer. I'm not going to tell you. Sometimes, I do resort to that, and it depends. It depends, right? But we have to have lots of tools in the toolkit. So I really do think that this kind of body work and the body psychotherapy thesis that was never written. This is a really long thing to try to, I wanted to try to make these correlations because that's what's happening as I'm starting to integrate my worlds a little bit. And I had all this heartbreak about not writing the thesis and thinking, what's wrong with me? I'm such a failure. Why would I not want? This was so important to me. This was years of work and years of study. And why, I know I was kind of a C student in junior high and high school, and but this mattered to me. This was something I felt very passionate about. Why couldn't I bring myself to do it? And the answer really might be that it took me many, many, many years. And I might write it now. At least I'm writing it, at least if not in written form. This is the healing. Sometimes we aren't ready to complete or write something because the process is still happening. And maybe that sounds like an excuse, but truly, so when I bring this energy back into it, when I bring the red berets into the mosh pit, that completely changes the energy. It completely contracts and makes us anger, and makes you picture that woman with her thumb down to $15 an hour. And there's almost like a violent sort of impulse or reaction that comes up from that. It's so, right? She's denying people their life. That's what that is. Um, so we need people in that fight, but also we have to think about how to uh, nourish and how to keep people feeling like whole, and keep that creativity and that aliveness and that movement and that joy. And red berets is one way. It's not the only way. Bring your art, bring your passion, your way of doing it. We need like hardline, like, so for those of you that are really amazing on Twitter at speaking this policy and tweeting this policy, man, I really love it when you all at me, and because that's your strength and that's what you bring to this, and this is super important. To those of you who bring your healthcare nightmares, your healthcare stories that you have survived through, or that your loved one has not. In the case of Scott DeNoyer and so many more. So this is what I'm doing. I am both the in the trenches type person, talking to pieces of it like Denny Heck and Derek Kilmer. But I don't want to do that without the resource, without, again, to return to the, the body psychotherapy and and holistic body work approach. We want always, as practitioners, to resource ourselves, and that is, there's different ways of doing that. We have a practice of meditation. We work on conscious breathing. We do some movement practice. We ground ourselves by while we're in the session. If I get so lost in the session, where we're working with some very deep and painful trauma held in somebody's system, in their tissues, in their energy field, and I get so lost in that because I'm not able to maintain my own. It's like giving somebody a lifeline. Well, you need a lifeline. You need to stay connected to uh, land, or you're going to sink with them. Like, and they don't want that. They want to be pulled. They want help. In order to be of the best help, we cannot just all go into the fray with no resources, with no joy, with no um, being connected to our wellness, you know. So this looks different for different people, and I'm not trying to make it the red berets for everybody. I'm explaining the concept of whatever brings joy. And Nina Turner talks about this a lot too, you know, and she's not the only one, but I do think of her a lot, you know. We have to be joyous. We have to stay connected to that. And hell yeah, there's righteous anger, and that belongs. But if we jump into that mosh pit and go into those sort of the dark forces at work in our system, the oppressive forces of the oligarchy, and we don't bring with us some resources or have ourselves anchored to our resource, we're going to lose our own health. And I've done this, you know, I've done this. I get too much in it, and then I get burnt out, and I get you know, and we have to bring ourselves back and get connected to our essential, because it's a long fight. And I do believe that we can do it. And so I don't know. I don't know if this is the red thread. I think it is, you know. I don't know at this point in time. I don't think that I can still turn in the thesis, you know, like but I don't plan on being, we never plan on anything. Maybe I will be a body psychotherapist. I was telling I don't have that right now. What I want to do right now is keep continuing to do the hours that I do, providing an integrated approach of biodynamic massage and craniosacral and integrated therapeutic massage to people. Um, that's very much informed. I'm not a body psychotherapist, but my work is very much informed with all of those skill sets that I've learned. You can't so I'm not practicing as a psychotherapist. Nobody feels that I'm trying to um, you know, work on that level. We're not contracted to do that, but I'm sure that I think they would say that they experience a kind of a different, a deeper, a different level of work than what they would get if they went to just say, I want to go get to a spa and go get a Swedish massage or something, you know. Um, but so I think, even though I never know what's going to happen. It could be that that I just cut off like three thoughts there, and it's because I'm thinking of um, yeah, yeah, Stephen. I've been, I kind of have, you know, been looking and wanting to read. I can't read from here, but so I had to lean in and see that. But I do think I agree with you to a big extent. It very much can. Twitter can bring out the worst. And then it also depends on the resourcing, you see. And so this is kind of how what this is exactly what I'm talking about. The red berets, and kind of sharing the imagery and sharing the actions of the red berets, and having a kind of core team who, you know, because I'm not the red berets, I'm not the only red beret. There's people that are still going to wholewashington.org and buying red berets, like saying, oh, now that I understand that these stitches are intentional and they're, you know, I being, if I'm going to order a red beret, can help actual like efforts, actual legislative and future ballot initiative efforts, and this person has actually knit every single stitch with the intention of healing our broken system. uh, that person is a red beret, and that person that is like, you know what, my finances are so tight, I can't afford it right now, but I retweet you, and uh, I'll do what I can. They are a red beret. Do you see what I mean? You don't have to have one on your head. It's a matter of like connecting up as a movement and bringing some joy and some solidarity and creativity. Just like I just knit for Dr. Dooley in purple. Nina's been doing purple for her campaign. Purple's just a beautiful color. Purple for me also represents kind of like Dr. Joe Jarvis, purple world or whatever. Purple is the bringing together, the color, the bleeding together of red and blue, which we need to dissolve. We need to dissolve red and blue. So in a way, it's kind of like, well, why are you knitting in red? We are the Red Berets because red is a wonderful color. It's a beautiful color. It was my grandma Nina's favorite color. There you go, Uncle Tim. If you watch this live stream at any point, um, yeah, red means a lot for me. Red was my grandmother's favorite color, and it's a very powerful color, and it's the color of heart, the heart, healthcare, fire, and passion, and blood. It's really a lot, so I choose to keep it as red. But you can see if I go up closer with this, and this is that fisherman's rib or brioche. Uh, I've put in, this is kind of an orangey red, and then this is purple. And we do, increasingly you will see some purple mixed in there. Uh, because we do, in my own opinion, we need to, actually, I think it's not even a matter of opinion. I'm right. No, no, but I mean, it's killing us to stay in these partisan bubbles and to be like identified with red or blue. Um, we need to be purple. We need to be a purple nation that we're still going to have. Like I was talking with somebody I know the other day that I was like, yeah, you know what? We just have to be able to talk as human beings. And I'm going to disagree with you on this, or you're going to disagree with me on that. We're going to have points where it's like, no, there's just no agreeing on that. We're different. Hey, that's okay. Isn't that okay? Isn't it okay to? There's certain things where it's not okay. Like racism is not okay, and being a bigot and not letting people love who they love is not okay. Um, and oligarchs making millions and millions of dollars while we can't even get a living wage, that's not okay. Um, there are some issues that people will continue to identify, they will tend to identify very strongly with one party or the other. But as people are discovering, they've tricked us. They've tricked us. The party that says that healthcare is a human right is doing everything they can to stop healthcare being a human right. If you don't want to talk about it as a human right, just talk about it as how we want to spend our, like that we contribute our tax dollars and they're stealing those from us. Okay, so you can frame it in however you want. If healthcare is a human right, doesn't speak to you, speak to it as, do you enjoy having your tax dollars literally robbed from you and getting nothing of value for them? I think we can talk about that, and so we need to find a way to say, oh, you know what, I'm very conservative on this, and I can see that you're on a completely different, you're liberal, or you're, I really don't like to be called a liberal, because if I'm a liberal, and Nancy Pelosi is not a liberal, by the way, but I don't even like progressive anymore because all these terms have been co-opted. I am a human being, and I believe that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if you cannot afford to take your child to the doctor, and you can't afford to, then you do not have that right, is being violated, and it's not being upheld. So I wanted to kind of get some of these thought processes on, because I will write this. This is, the Red Berets are the thesis. They are the healing they are the thesis that I looked for all those years ago. And it may not, and it won't be probably that I get to get that certificate from Cambridge Body Psychotherapy Center, but it is happening. It is what's the red thread has finally come through. So thanks for watching, everyone. I think this is my longest live stream ever. But it's some of my backstory, some of where the Red Berets originally came from. You know, the early formative seeds, and I wanted all these ideas kind of down on video so that if I do choose to write it and submit it, just for the sake of submitting it, not because I think I'll get a certificate out of it. I don't even know that I need that. But anyway, have a good day, everybody. Talk to you soon. Let's see, did I give you a call to action? Yeah, please go to follow, if you're on Twitter, go follow at Whole Washington. Share a tweet of theirs, make a comment, share your healthcare story. If you have the means to order a Red Beret or some mittens for Medicare that are inspired by Bernie's mittens, uh, or you know someone who maybe uh, would like to get those, then please go to the merch page on wholewashington.org or go to my pinned tweet and share that out. It has the link. And explain to people these red berets are not cosmetic. They're not just cosmetic. They're about healing and knitting together a fabric, a moral fabric for our country and for the movement. Thanks.